J'aimerais remercier les travailleurs qui
Before I
sont en train
begin,
de bâtir des
I'd like to
logements et
thank
surtout
the workers
mon
who are
ami,
building
le
homes,
policier
and
et futur
especially
député pour Delta,
the
Jesse Sahuta.
security and police for
C'est
Delta,
un expert dans la lutte,
an
le
expert in the
jiu-jitsu
fight,
et d'autres arts martiaux, mais je
and
vous
other
assure
martial
qu'il est très
arts,
paisible.
but he's very peaceful.
C'est une très belle communauté que
It's
cette
a very
entreprise
beautiful
et les
community.
travailleurs ici sont en
The
train de
workers
bâtir.
here are
C'est la
building.
deuxième fois que je les visite.
This
Et
is
ça
the second
représente la
time I
promesse
meet
du
them, and it
Canada. Une
represents
promesse
the
très simple
promise
que
of
j'ai appris
Canada.
comme jeune
The very simple
qui
promise I
était
learned as a
l'enfant
young
de
person,
deux enseignants.
a child of
Et
two
c'était ça,
teachers,
que peu
and that was
importe
it.
d'où vous venez,
That no
si vous
matter where you
travaillez
come
fort,
from,
vous
working
pourrez avoir
hard,
un grand chèque de paie,
you
une
can get a
bonne
big
chèque de
paycheck
paie,
and a
qui
good
achète
paycheck
de nourriture
that
et de
buys
logements
food and
abordables dans des
affordable
communautés
housing
sécuritaires. C'était
in
ça
safe
le
communities.
deal au Canada.
This is the deal
Mais
in
après
Canada.
9 ans des
And after
libéraux
9 years
de
of
Trudeau,
liberals,
Carney, Freeland,
Trudeau and
cette
Carney and
promesse
Freeland,
est
this
brisée.
promise has been broken.
Qu'est-ce qui est arrivé au Canada depuis
What has
2020
happened to
quand
Canada
M. Carney est
since
devenu
2015
conseiller
when Mr. Carney
économique
became the
à
economic
Justin
counselor
Trudeau
for Justin
et
Trudeau?
Mme Freeland est devenue
And Ms. Freeland
ministre des Finances
became
pour
the
Justin
finance
Trudeau.
minister for
Je vous
Justin Trudeau.
avise que le PIB par capita, c'est-à-dire
The
le revenu
per
par
capita
personne, est
GDP
tombé plus
revenue
rapidement ici au Canada
per person
que
is going
dans
lower
tous
than
les
in
pays
Canada
du
than in
G7.
any
En fait, en
G7
même temps,
nation.
le PIB
And
par
in
personne
the
aux
time,
États-Unis a grandi
at the same time, the
de
GDP
8%.
per person in the
Vous vous
US has
demandez
grown
pourquoi on
by
ne peut pas
8%. You wonder
avoir de
why we
bonnes
can't
choses au
have nice
Canada,
things in
comme les
Canada,
soins de santé, comme
in
les aliments
healthcare,
nutritifs, des
in
logements
nutritious
ou des
food,
maisons. C'est parce qu'on ne
and
fabrique
housing.
moins de choses et on dépense plus pour les acheter.
It's
On
because
emprunte et
we have fewer
on
things
imprime de
and spend
l'argent pour payer la
more to
différence.
get them.
Et
We
ça fait
print more
grimper
money
le
here,
coût et nous laisse avec une dette
and
et
that
des taux
raises
d'intérêt
costs and leaves
en
us with a
hausse.
debt
Tout est
and
brisé et
higher
le
interest
pays est
rate.
fauché après 9 ans
The whole
de
country
Trudeau,
is in
sa
trouble
ministre
after
des
9
Finances
years of
Freeland
Trudeau
et son
and
conseiller
his finance
économique
minister Freeland
Carney.
and economic
C'est le
advisor
pire,
Carney.
littéralement le pire. Le
It
Canada
is
a
the
connu le
worst,
pire
literally the
baisse de
worst.
son revenu
Canada has
depuis
known its
le revenu par personne
worst
que
drop in
depuis
income per
la
person
Grande Dépression.
since the
Sous
Great
les
Depression.
libéraux de Carney, Trudeau et Freeland, le
The
Canada a
Trudeau,
connu la
Carney,
pire croissance du
Freeland
revenu par
liberals,
personne de
Canada
tous
has known
les
the lowest growth per
gouvernements
person
depuis les années 30. L'inflation
of
au
all
niveau
governments since the
immobilier
30s.
au Canada est la pire.
Inflation
G7
is the
depuis
worst
son entrée
in the
depuis l'entrée en
G7
fonction de ce gouvernement libéral.
since this
L'OCDE
liberal
a
government came into
calculé
function.
que le Canada aura la
So
pire
Canada will have
croissance économique
the worst
parmi
economic
tous
growth
ses membres
among all the members
pendant les prochaines 5 ans.
of G7 in the next 5 years and the next 35 years,
Si
which
vous êtes
means
jeune aujourd'hui, votre
that if you're a
salaire
young
et niveau de vie
person
seront de
now,
plus en plus inférieurs
your
à ceux
wages
des
and
jeunes
quality
de
of
tous les
life will
autres
be
pays
lower and
avancés.
lower of all the young people of advanced
Et
countries in the
ce
world.
n'était pas comme ça
And it
avant.
was not like this
En
before.
effet,
In
on était
effect,
un pays riche avant
we
les
were a
libéraux.
rich country
Mais
before
même
the liberals.
l'économiste
Now,
libéral
the
Trevor
liberal
Tone s'en rend
economist
compte
Trevor Tone
que
has noticed that
l'économie est en chute
the
libre
economy
après
is in
9
free
ans
fall
de
after
Carney,
9
Freeland et
years
Trudeau.
of Carney,
Il a
Freeland,
dit
and
que, et je
Trudeau.
cite,
He
l'Ontario,
said, and
par
I
exemple, a un
quote,
niveau de
Ontario,
production
for
économique par
example,
personne qui est
has a
similaire
per person
à
economic
celui de
production
l'Alabama.
rate that's
Les
similar to
Maritimes
Alabama.
sont en dessous
The
du
Maritimes are
Mississippi.
below
Et le Québec et le
Mississippi,
Manitoba
and
sont
Quebec and
derrière la
Manitoba
Virginie en
are
ce qui stade.
behind
Seul
West
Alberta
Virginia,
dépasse la moyenne
and
américaine de
Alberta
76 $. Et
passes
en
the
fait,
average of US
le
$76.
PIB
And
de
in fact, the
Texas,
GDP of
un
Texas,
seul État, est maintenant plus
a
grand
single
que le
state,
PIB
is bigger
de
than
tous
the
les 10
GDP
provinces et
of
3
all the
territoires du Canada
provinces and 3 territories of
confondus.
Canada.
Le Texas est à 10 millions de personnes de moins
Texas
que
has
le
10 million
Canada
fewer
et a
people
une
than
économie
Canada,
beaucoup plus grande
and
que
its
le nôtre.
economy is
Et
much
qu'est-ce
bigger
que ça
than
veut dire?
ours. And what does
Ça
that
veut
mean?
dire que chaque
That
Canadien
means
gagne
that
20
each
000 de
Canadian
moins
earns $20,000
qu'un Américain.
less than an American.
20 000. Et ça, c'est
20,000.
dans les mesurés des dollars américains.
and that is in American dollars. That's because the Liberals, with the help of the Bloc, has massively increased the cost of bureaucracy, debt, taxes, income tax. They have blocked infrastructure projects and energy projects, which has weakened us. And now President Trump sees the weakness that the Liberals have created, and he's very happy because that gives him a lot of power. And now President Trump is threatening us with tariffs. And he wants to take away Canadian jobs. Why do Liberals want to help him take away these jobs? Why do Liberals want to increase taxes and income tax on energy, investment, and work? And now, I will talk about one of these tax increases, the tax on jobs. Freeland's Liberals, in her budget, with the council of Mark Carney, have announced an increase in taxes on investment and jobs, the capital gains tax. This tax is on farmers during a crisis of food cost prices, and a tax on doctors during a lack of doctors, a tax on building housing during a housing crisis, a tax on small business during an economic crisis. It's irresponsible, and this is why today I am announcing that a Pierre Poilievre government, a conservative government based on common sense, will eliminate the capital gains tax hike from the Liberals. I will cut taxes and income tax on energy, investment, work, housing, and construction to bring money back to Canada. There will be a great drop in income tax. It'll be patriotic during a conservative government to bring back jobs here and be strong enough to face down President Trump. And I have a message for President Trump. Canada will never be the 51st state of the U.S. In fact, we will be stronger in our competition. We will bring back jobs and businesses here in Canada by cutting taxes and removing barriers to economic development. As opposed to the Liberals, will be stronger. And there will be reciprocal tariffs against the Americans if they decide to attack us economically unprovoked. We will defend our economy. We will be strong. We will eliminate GST on housing to save $50,000 for a young Quebec family when they buy a home. Only the Conservatives can put an end to the chaos. Now, Liberals have lost control. They've lost control of immigration, inflation, spending, debt, and the Bloc can still spread chaos with their sovereignty talk. We don't need this chaos. We need strength. We need unity to bring our country, make our country stronger and bring money, investment, jobs here to Canada. We will unite our country. We will bring back the promise of Canada. That each person who works hard can have a bigger paycheck, able to buy food and affordable housing in safe communities, a free country, a strong country, Canada. First, Canada forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. I want to thank the incredible workers who build these beautiful homes. They are the backbone of our country, and it would be nice if the people who built our homes could afford to live in those homes again, like they could before the 9 years of the Carney, Freeland, Trudeau Liberal government. I want to thank the great Jesse Sahota, who is a police officer that has been keeping our community safe, a wrestling coach who is a great mentor to the youth, and a master in jiu-jitsu and other martial arts, but I assure you he is a gentle giant. So thank you very much, Jesse, for being the future Member of Parliament for Delta. You ever wonder why we can't have nice things in Canada anymore? Like healthcare, or affordable food, or homes, the stuff we used to take for granted as Canadians? You ever wonder why that is? After 9 years of Trudeau, Freeland, and Carney being in power, you know, in 2020, Carney started advising Trudeau on economics, right when Freeland became the finance minister. And what has been the result of this pact? Well, Canada's per capita GDP, income per person, has dropped more than any other country in that time period. Since 2020, our GDP per capita has dropped more than any other G7 country. That means lower wages and less purchasing power. We've seen $500 billion of Canadian investment pour into the United States to build pipelines, mines, factories, homes, and other infrastructure, creating American jobs with Canadian investment dollars. What has this meant in human terms? 2 million people lined up at food banks. A quarter of our population is now living in poverty. Stats Canada says that we now have the biggest gap between rich and poor since Stats Canada began recording that stat point in 1999. Our money is pouring out of Canada after Liberals, Carney, Trudeau, and Freeland blocked major resource projects, raised taxes on work, energy, and saving, and after they ran up huge deficits with massive overspending. That is the record of Carney and Freeland. Now they have a carbon tax that's 17 cents a liter. Carbon tax Carney has said the tax is not high enough and that it is rising too slowly for him. He wants it to rise even more. Chrystia Freeland has passed into law an increase to 61 cents a liter over the next 5 years. These lying Liberals will deny that right before the election to try and trick Canadians into letting them back in to raise taxes all over again. And then there's the jobs tax. In the budget of last year, Chrystia Freeland announced a capital gains tax hike. Now 66% of investment gains will be taxed under the Carney, Trudeau, Freeland Liberals. This is a tax on home builders when we have a housing shortage, a tax on doctors when we have a doctor shortage. It is a tax on small business when we have an economic crisis. It's a tax on farmers when we have a food price crisis. And it will send billions of dollars away. According to C.D. Howe, this tax will cost 400,000 jobs. How many of those jobs are represented here? Which one of these workers is going to lose their jobs because of this tax increase? How are they going to pay their bills when this Liberal tax increase is fully implemented? Well, the good news is common sense Conservatives are announcing today that under a Pierre Poilievre-led government, I will axe the Liberal jobs tax and reverse the capital gains hike that Chrystia Freeland announced last spring. We will bring down taxes. In fact, I will bring in, it's going to be called the Bring It Home tax cut. It will reduce taxes on work, investment, making stuff, building homes, and energy so that we can bring home more powerful paychecks and production to Canada. And now more than ever, we need it. President Trump has said he wants to tariff our country. We cannot afford economically destructive Liberal taxes that will drive even more business and jobs out of our country. We need to stand strong. My message to President Trump is this: Canada will never be the 51st state, and not only that, the free ride is over. The era of Liberal tax increases and anti-development policies that have driven $500 billion of our money south of the border is over. I will be cutting taxes, removing red tape, and unleashing free enterprise to bring home hundreds of billions of dollars of production and paychecks to this country. We will be a fierce free enterprise economy that delivers powerful paychecks to our people, that will allow anyone from anywhere to achieve anything, that guarantees that hard work gets you a powerful paycheck that buys affordable food and homes in safe neighborhoods. That is how we bring it home for Canada. That is how we put Canada first. Canada first, Canada last, Canada always. Let's bring it home.
Thank you. We will now take questions from the floor.
Hello, my name's Yvette Brand. I'm from CBC. Could I ask that you also answer in French for my colleagues who...
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much.
Oui, merci.
Yeah. You could be Prime Minister within a few months in this country. Would you be willing to impose export tax or restrictions on Canadian oil? Because you'll be dealing with Trump's threats of tariffs. This would put pressure on the Trump administration. Or is this off the table for you as it is for Danielle Smith in Alberta?
Well, first of all, I think that the first thing that President Trump should do when he gets into the Oval Office is to send a big bouquet of flowers to the Liberal government in Ottawa. By blocking pipelines and LNG plants in Canada, the Liberals have forced Canadians to sell almost all of our energy to the United States, giving President Trump massive leverage in making these tariff threats. Had they allowed the Energy East and Northern Gateway pipelines to go ahead, had they rapidly approved LNG plants to sell the natural gas that Japan, Greece, Germany, and other countries were looking for us to sell them directly, we wouldn't have to give 100%, almost 100%, of our hydrocarbons to the Americans at discount prices, and you wouldn't have had to ask me that question. Because I would have answered, in that scenario, I would have answered, we'll go around the Americans. We'll sell our energy directly. But that's something that the Liberals would not let us do. Freeland supported killing the Energy East pipeline, which would have moved 1 million barrels of Western oil to the St. John refinery and off to Europe, by the way, which would have helped defund Putin. Carney testified in the industry committee that he was against the Northern Gateway pipeline to take Canadian oil to Asia without going through the United States. By the way, while his company buys pipelines in the Middle East and in Brazil. How unpatriotic is that? So, frankly, the Liberals have got us in this mess by making us beholden to the Americans and giving them, the Americans, our energy at massive price discounts, selling our oil for $15 typically below the market rate, and selling them natural gas for $4 per million metric British thermal units when they're going for $13 in Europe. That is economic sadomasochism, and I will put an end to it. When I'm Prime Minister, we will repeal the anti-energy law C-69. We will rapidly approve LNG plants and any other private sector unsubsidized investments to expand our ability to sell our energy without going through the Americans. And I will unite our people. We see right now that not only have the Liberals weakened our economy, now they're resorting to dividing our people. Divide and conquer. Right when the president is threatening us with tariffs, what is the first thing the Liberal Party of Freeland and Carney think to do? Divide Canadians. Divide our provinces. We don't need to be divided. We need to be united. All provinces, all Canadians. Let's put Canada first. Thank you.
En français.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. The first thing President Trump should do when he becomes president of the U.S. is to send flowers to the Liberals of Canada, because the Liberals gave a huge gift to President Trump by preventing the pipeline building, natural gas plants that would have allowed Canada to sell its energy products directly to other countries abroad. And because of that, we have to give our energy to the Americans at a very low price, which is below market rates. Now, we are giving away our natural gas for $4 to the Americans, and yet it's $13 in Europe. But we can't sell our gas to Europe because the Liberals blocked the North Pipeline that would have allowed us to sell our energy directly to Europe and definance Putin by bypassing the United States. And now we're depending on the Americans because of the Liberals and the radical left that want to know nothing about economic growth. I will allow the building pipelines and natural gas plants and other projects without state subsidies in order to export energy throughout the world. I will also unite our country. I know Liberals want to win the elections by dividing Canadians from one province to the next. President Trump will really like this approach because it gives him more power. I don't want to divide Canadians nor the provinces. I want to unite all Canadians in order to face the unjustified threats from President Trump. This is how we will put Canada first. Thank you.
Good morning, Andrea McPherson, Global News. Your reaction to Danielle Smith's refusal to sign that joint agreement on the tariff retaliation plan by the premiers, and the impact you think that will have on Canada's battle against the tariffs?
Yes, I mean, like I said, I think the first thing President Trump will do when he takes office is to send a bouquet of flowers to the Liberals of Freeland, Carney, and Trudeau, who have weakened and divided our country and given him the upper hand. The Liberals have forced Canadians to sell 100% of our oil and gas to the Americans at discount prices, which has put us in this position of weakness. It'd be nice if we had pipelines and export terminals that could take our energy to Asia and Europe without going through the United States. But of course, the economic radicals of Trudeau, Freeland, and Carney blocked those projects because of their radical ideology, and they have made us more and more dependent on President Trump. And my approach will be exactly the opposite. I will quickly approve energy projects to send our energy to the rest of the world without relying on Americans, and we will make our country more self-reliant and independent. I will also unite our country. The Liberals are trying to divide one province against another, Canadian against Canadian, right at our moment of maximum vulnerability. This is because we do not have a functional federal government. So we have effectively 10 different foreign affairs ministers, one from each province, trying to fight separately. If we had a carbon tax election now, we could elect a strong, stable, national majority government that would stand up for all Canadians, all industries, in all provinces, and that's what we need to do.
En français.
Merci beaucoup. Comme j'ai dit, les libéraux ont affaibli.
As I said, the Liberals have weakened Canada by blocking energy infrastructure projects, which has forced Canadians to sell our energy to the Americans at a discount price, below the market rate, and now we're in a very vulnerable position. But also, Liberals want to win elections by dividing and pitting provinces and Canadians one against the other at a moment of extreme vulnerability, and President Trump will see the weakness that the Liberals will impose on Canada, and that's enough. Now we need a good, common sense government that will unite Canadians that's strong enough to face President Trump and will bring production back to Canada and defend all Canadians. Canada first and Canada first.
Hi, Monica Gould with City News. Barring any last-minute changes, TikTok is set to be banned in the U.S. this weekend. I'm curious what your thoughts are on a ban, and if you were to form government, if that is something you would pursue because of the national security concerns.
It's a good question. I've already ordered all of our Conservative MPs, senators, and our staff to stay away from TikTok altogether. stop using it because it risks infiltration and espionage and manipulation by the hostile regime in Beijing. I'll be following the decision in the United States very carefully. I don't have anything to announce right now, but it's a very good question and we'll be following it. Thank you.
En français.
Merci beaucoup, madame.
C'est
une bonne question.
It's a good question.
I've
already banned all members of our party from in the Parliament, in the Senate, and our assistants to use TikTok at work. We will follow the Americans' decision with a lot of interest. We need to protect Canadians against espionage and interference, which has grown enormously after 9 years of the Liberals, and we will defend our country in the best way.
Thank you. This will be the final question.
Thank you, Brenna Owen, Canadian Press. So just to clarify, do you support including oil and gas in any retaliatory tariffs?
We don't import almost any oil and gas from the Americans, at least raw oil and gas. We mostly export it. So I'm not sure I understand your question when you say tariffs on American oil and gas. We don't import very much. Unfortunately, what we do is we send them our raw materials. They send it back refined. We don't have the value-added jobs in Canada, and that's because our very high taxes and heavy red tape have made it impossible for us to expand our industrial base and to make ourselves more self-reliant. But what I will do is axe the Liberal jobs tax. And I should mention, I forgot to mention this in my remarks, I will also be slashing corporate welfare. That's the subsidies and the handouts we give to big businesses so that we can use those savings to make sure that getting rid of this tax hike does not add to our deficit. I've committed to a dollar for dollar principle. Every time I spend a dollar or lose a dollar in tax revenues, I will find the savings so that we reduce the deficit. Et je vais répéter ça en français. Je vais couper la BS corporatif.
The corporate welfare, I'll ask that to reduce costs and ensure that axing the capital gains tax doesn't add to the deficit. That's responsible. And that's the approach I'll take. So thank you very much.
All right, so we are following this live event going on in Delta, BC, just a little bit south of Vancouver. Pierre Poilievre is there, as you can see, at a housing development with a big announcement saying, first of all, if he's elected Prime Minister, he will cut the capital gains tax hike that was brought in under the Trudeau government. Poilievre then going on to say the Trudeau government has weakened Canada, allowing incoming President Donald Trump to push Canada around with the threat of tariffs and talk about trying to annex Canada as a 51st state. You heard time and again Pierre Poilievre using the three names, Trudeau, Carney, and Freeland, over and over again, trying to draw the attention to viewers that these three are all the same, as he puts it. Of course, Poilievre is well aware that Trudeau is no longer going to be the adversary that he will face in the next election. It could likely be either Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland. We're expecting Carney to jump into the race later today. Poilievre also didn't answer a question that he was asked several times. Does he agree or not with Premier Danielle Smith of Alberta, who yesterday refused to sign on to a joint pan-Canadian statement by all the other premiers in the federal government urging a united front? Smith saying that Alberta's energy is off limits to any sort of tariffs. That might, of course, cause more of a rupture with the United States. She's not in favor of that. That led to criticism that she is going rogue. All right, we're going to keep our eye on all of that. Big day in politics in our country. We'll be right back. You are watching CTV News Channel.